You? Applying for this position? Madison laughed, sliding my resume across the table like it was a joke. Sweetheart, maybe try something smaller. Something more you. I sat across from her in the glass-walled conference room, my heart pounding. The room was buzzing with sunlight, a warm Monday morning in Chicago, but her words sliced right through it. She didn't recognize me yet. Not fully. I appreciate your concern, I said evenly, fingers lightly folded on the table. Madison tilted her head, that same smug little smirk I remembered from grad school creeping back. Back then, she called me make-believe Morgan, because I dared to dream big. But today? Today she wasn't mocking a dream. She was applying for a job. At my company. And I was the one about to decide her future. My name is Morgan Ellis, and for as long as I can remember, I wanted to be a creative director. Not just a title on a door, but someone who told stories that mattered. Stories that shaped brands, moved people, created waves. I was the quiet kid in the back of the classroom sketching logos for imaginary companies instead of paying attention to algebra. When other girls were dreaming about weddings, I was doodling ad campaigns. I grew up in a modest neighborhood in Columbus, Ohio. My dad, Carl Ellis, worked in a tire shop, and my mom, Janet, managed the front desk at a dental clinic. We weren't poor, but we definitely weren't private school rich either. Still, they gave me what mattered. Honesty, work ethic, and space to dream. That was enough for me. In high school, I started designing posters for school plays. One of them, a moody, minimalist black and white design for our town, got featured in a local paper. I was 16. That newspaper clipping is still folded in my old sketchbook. College was where I first crossed paths with Madison Hale. We were both marketing majors at Northwestern University. Madison was tall, blonde, and magnetic. Her parents were loaded. Her dad ran a major investment firm, and her mom was some kind of ex-Vogue editor who hosted charity galas. Madison had style, power, and the kind of confidence that made professors chuckle nervously when she challenged them in class. I admired her at first. Who wouldn't? But then I realized something. Madison had a cruel streak. It wasn't always obvious, but it was sharp. Like when she jokingly critiqued someone's class presentation by saying, "You really went for that font choice, didn't you?" Or how she once leaned over my laptop, looked at a logo I designed for a class project, and said, "That's cute, Morgan. It looks like something for a pet store." It wasn't a pet store. It was a mental health nonprofit concept I'd poured my heart into. But what stung the most wasn't her opinion. It was the way others laughed with her. That room full of ambitious, young creatives, and I felt like a ghost. No one stood up for me. Not even me. I didn't have the designer wardrobe. I didn't throw wine-soaked rooftop parties. What I had was a beat-up laptop, a used sketchpad, and a gut-level drive that refused to quit. My mentor, Professor Elena Brown, saw something in me early on. She once pulled me aside after class and said, "Morgan, don't let polish fool you. Grit gets farther than glitter." I wrote that on a sticky note and kept it on my dorm wall for 4 years. By senior year, I was interning at a mid-tier Chicago agency. It was unpaid, but I took night shifts at a coffee shop to cover my rent. Madison, meanwhile, landed a summer gig at a huge agency downtown, thanks to a family connection. At graduation, she won the university's Creative Impact Award. I didn't even make the nomination list. I clapped for her anyway. After college, things were rough. I sent out 73 job applications. Got 2 interviews. No offers. I freelanced, picking up scraps, logo redesigns for Etsy shops, menu cards for food trucks, even designing someone's wedding invite for a $50 Starbucks gift card. But every design made me better. Sharper. Quicker. I moved into a small studio apartment above a dry cleaner in Uptown. It had a slanted ceiling and no AC, but the light was beautiful in the mornings. I called it the Nest. It was where I built the foundation of Ellis Creative, the agency I would later go on to run. But back then it was just me, my MacBook, and a dream I was barely keeping alive. My first real break came through a fluke. A local baker named Janelle stumbled across a wedding invite I designed on Pinterest. She messaged me, asked for help branding her new gluten-free bakery. She gave me $600 up front, more than I'd ever been paid for a single project. I didn't just design a logo. I gave her a brand story, packaging design, social media templates, and even wrote her launch slogan, "Indulgence without apology." Within 6 months, her bakery had a line down the block every Saturday. Word spread. Janelle told her cousin, who owned a boutique gym. The gym's manager knew a blogger who introduced me to an influencer couple launching a skincare line. One referral led to another. My work spoke louder than any degree or pedigree. I let my silence become strategy. By year 3, I had a client list that included 2 national brands, a local university, and a major nonprofit. I hired 2 assistants, then a junior designer. I moved out of the nest and into a modest downtown office with exposed brick, plants, and IKEA furniture that I lovingly built myself on a weekend. But I never forgot the moments I almost quit, like the time my card declined for a $3 coffee. Or the night my mom called and begged me to just come home for a bit because she could hear the tiredness in my voice. Or that one rainy Wednesday when I sat on the floor eating cold noodles and whispering, "You're not invisible. Keep going." One memory stands out. My grandmother Ruth, on a visit just before she passed, came into my studio with a tray of lemon bars and looked around. "You're building something no one can take from you," she said, smiling through her chemo scarf. "Dreams mocked by others are usually the ones they fear." That line lives inside me. Fast forward 5 years. Ellis Creative now occupies a full floor in a Chicago River North building. We've got a 10-person team, an in-house podcast studio, a mural wall for brainstorming, and the kind of coffee that makes your soul sit up straight. We're not the biggest agency in town, but we're known. We win pitches through authenticity. We champion underdog brands. We work with ethics. I made sure of that. And then, 2 weeks ago, my HR manager knocked on my door.
"Hey, Morgan.
One of the top candidates for the new associate strategist role is Madison Hale, from Northwestern. Want me to screen her out?" I paused. The name was a time bomb, but I shook my head. "Let's bring her in for an interview." Because here's the thing, I believe in watching people walk into rooms they never expected you to own. Madison sat across from me in a soft gray chair, legs crossed, resume in hand, and a glossy tote perched beside her like it belonged on a runway. The conference room was sunlit and minimal, my aesthetic. White walls, framed campaign posters from our biggest wins, a vase of fresh eucalyptus on the corner of the table. It smelled like clean paper and ambition. She still hadn't realized who I was. Or maybe she had and just couldn't believe it. I let her speak first. "So, I've spent the last few years consulting," she said, smiling. "Mostly brand audits, influencer partnerships, and content strategy. I've worked with some pretty big names, Valor Media, Spotwave, even handled a rollout for Naira Glow Skincare." I nodded, silent. "I came across Ellis Creative on LinkedIn," she continued. "I love your tone. It's fresh, ethical, emotionally driven. It's the kind of agency I'd love to grow in." My assistant Lena was sitting in the back corner, scribbling notes, her expression unreadable. "And what drew you to the strategist role specifically?" I asked. Madison tilted her head. "I think I'd bring a strong point of view. I know what resonates. I've got taste. I can elevate content that's just too ordinary. Like mine used to be, right?" She was smooth, well-spoken. Her portfolio, at least on paper, was strong. But there were cracks. Case studies with shallow metrics. Campaigns dressed up in buzzwords. No real substance. I leaned forward slightly. "Have you had experience working in a leadership structure where your creative ideas are accountable to community impact, not just conversion?" I asked. She blinked. I mean, I care about impact, obviously. But you can't measure emotional resonance, right? I didn't respond, just made a note. We wrapped up the interview 15 minutes later. I shook her hand. Her grip was firm, polished nails, expensive perfume. I walked her to the elevator myself. She didn't ask my name. The next day, Lena popped her head into my office. "So, we shortlisting her?" I looked up. Set the second interview. You sure? Positive. I wanted her to see me.
Fully.
On my own turf. Not with a smirk, but with awareness. The second interview was a panel. Madison walked into the room with that same glide of confidence, but this time she paused. Her eyes landed on the wall behind me, the plaque that read Ellis Creative, founded by Morgan Ellis, 2017. Her lips parted slightly. Then her eyes shifted back to my face. Morgan, she said, voice uncertain now. I smiled. Not wide. Just enough. Hi, Madison. For a beat, she didn't move. Like a reel in her head was rewinding too fast to control. Northwestern. Group projects. That one time in the library when she saw me sketching packaging ideas on a napkin and told me it looked like a cereal box. This is your company? Yes, I said. I'm the founder and creative director. And today, I'll be leading this second round interview. The silence was long enough to feel satisfying. Then, because life has a sense of humor, the receptionist knocked and said, Morgan, your lunch with the board is in 20, if you want a head start. Madison blinked, gathering herself.
Well,
that's congratulations. You've really made something. I could see her recalibrating, calculating how to pivot. Maybe this could still work in her favor. She sat down, crossing her legs again, but this time her posture was more guarded. Less sparkle, more strategy. The interview began. Lena asked about social listening trends. My strategist, Jay, challenged her on a recent campaign she'd listed that had gone ethically sideways. Madison fumbled. I watched it happen, the slow unraveling of someone who thought she knew the room better than she did. Finally, I asked her to walk us through her process on rebranding a nonprofit client. Well, she said, I start with the logo, usually. Then we tweak tone. No discovery phase? No community insights. I use mood boards. And my gut. People like clean, aspirational aesthetics. And what if that aesthetic erases the client's voice? She stared at me. I don't think I've ever had that issue. Jay glanced at me. I gave a small nod. That was all. After she left, Lena exhaled hard. She really didn't know who you were the first time? Not a clue. Jay laughed. That's rich. Think we're done with her? I stood. Not quite. Later that week, I requested a private follow-up with Madison. A courtesy. Or maybe a full-circle moment. She arrived on time. This time, she looked different. Less perfectly styled. No curated handbag. Just a leather folder and eyes that searched for footing. I wanted to thank you, she said quickly, for even considering me. I had no idea. I gestured for her to sit.
She did.
I remember college, I said quietly. I remember how loud your voice was. How easily you dismissed mine. She looked down. I also remember designing projects while working night shifts, submitting to agencies that ghosted me, eating noodles on the floor of a studio I couldn't afford. She said nothing. And now here we are, I said, opening a file. I have 2 proposals on my desk. One is for an associate strategist. The other is for a community outreach apprentice role. Less pay.
Less shine.
But a chance to rebuild your foundation. Which one would you like to be considered for? Her eyes widened. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you accountability. And an open door. If you're ready to walk through it. Madison swallowed hard. Why? I closed the folder. Because I remember what it feels like to want a second chance, and how few people offer it when you need it most. She didn't answer right away. Then, slowly, she said, the apprentice role. I nodded. She stood, visibly smaller than when she walked in. But not defeated, just human.
At the door, she paused.
I used to call you make-believe, Morgan. I'm sorry. I held her gaze. You were wrong, I said softly. The dream was always real. You just couldn't see it. She left. And I sat back in my chair, staring out the window at the city skyline I had once imagined through a dorm window, alone, afraid, and on fire with belief. Now, the office was mine. And I didn't need validation. I had built the dream. And she had just applied to be a small part of it. Madison began her apprenticeship the following Monday. No press release, no announcement. Just her name added to the internal Slack group and a new email address in the company directory. Madison at Ellis Creative, CO. Some of the team noticed. Most didn't care. We hired often, and titles at Ellis Creative didn't mean status so much as responsibility. But the ones who did recognize her, the ones who knew my story, who had sat across from me during late-night pitch sessions when I told them how badly I'd once wanted someone to believe in me, they were watching. The first week was quiet. Madison was punctual, polite, and unusually quiet. She sat in on brainstorms but didn't speak unless prompted. She took notes, asked questions, shadowed our junior strategist Amelia, and volunteered for grunt tasks without complaint. No eye rolls. No superiority. It was unexpected. But change, I've learned, always costs something. And hers was coming due. It started small. A few missed details on a deliverable. An idea in a meeting that borrowed a little too heavily from Amelia's pitch deck. Nothing major, but enough for me to call her in. We sat across from each other in my office, eucalyptus in the vase behind me, sun cutting gold slants across the wall. Madison, I said gently, I want to check in. How are you adjusting? She hesitated. Honestly, I'm still finding my rhythm. It's been humbling. I nodded. I appreciate your honesty and your effort. But part of growth here is owning every step, especially the small ones. She looked up. Are you saying I'm not doing well? I'm saying you're not invisible. We notice everything here, good and bad. She didn't speak for a long moment. Then, I didn't think I'd feel so out of place. Welcome to the feeling most of us have lived with our whole lives, I said. Her eyes flicked to me. Something behind them shifted, maybe recognition, maybe shame. The following week, the tension escalated. Amelia came to me after lunch one day, lips tight. She tried to overwrite my deck, she said. Without telling me. Said she thought her version was cleaner. Did you tell her to stop? I did. She backed off. But I don't trust her. I sighed. Leave it with me. That evening, I invited Madison for coffee. Not in the office. Neutral ground. We met at a small cafe on Armitage. I chose the spot intentionally, an old haunt from my freelancing days. The barista still remembered my name. Madison arrived 5 minutes late, wearing less makeup than usual and no curated outfit. Just jeans and a sweater. She looked real. I get the feeling you want to talk, she said. I do, I replied. About collaboration. About respect. About past patterns bleeding into new spaces. She stirred her tea. You're still mad at me. I'm not, I said truthfully. But I'm watching. Madison set her spoon down. You think I'm the same person I was in college. Are you? She didn't answer. Instead, she looked around the cafe. I remember this place. You used to bring your laptop here. I smiled slightly. You noticed? I did. You always looked like you were building something. I was. Another pause. Then she asked, do you ever feel like people want you to fail just so they can say, I told you so? All the time. Even now. Especially now. She exhaled. I want to be better, Morgan. But I don't know how to undo what I was. I leaned back. Start by listening more than you speak. By giving credit. By staying longer than is comfortable. She nodded. It was a moment. Fragile. But real. But not everyone believed it. The next team meeting was a creative roundtable. A chance to brainstorm for a major client, a nonprofit tackling housing insecurity. I opened the floor to ideas. Amelia led with a concept, humanizing stories through first-person narratives and user-submitted visuals. Madison raised her hand. What if we added a partner campaign with Airbnb to show dual perspectives, travel and shelter? It wasn't a bad idea. But the way she said it, confident, polished, gave the impression it had originated from her. Amelia went quiet. Others looked uncomfortable. I cleared my throat. Let's make sure we're building on each other's ideas, not erasing them. Madison glanced at me, caught. She nodded. But later, I found Amelia in the stairwell. She's doing it again, she whispered. taking space that isn't hers. She'll stop, I said. Or she'll leave. But that line, leave, lingered. Because Madison wasn't just struggling. She was unraveling. I noticed her starting to stay later, come in earlier. Her notes were scribbled, not color-coded. She snapped at Lena once in the hallway. And then one night I got an email. Subject: urgent. It was from our HR lead, Marcus. Inside was a screenshot of a Slack message, Madison venting in a private DM with another team member. It's like Morgan's building a cult. I don't know how everyone drinks her Kool-Aid. I'm trying, but this place is exhausting. Below it, the team member's awkward reply. Maybe talk to her about it? She's actually pretty chill. Marcus had flagged it as concerning but not actionable. But I knew what it was. The mask slipping. I called Madison into my office the next morning. She entered, eyes already defensive. Want to explain this? I asked, sliding the printout across the desk. She read it. Her shoulders stiffened. I was venting. It was private. We don't do private toxicity here. If you're struggling, say so. Her voice rose. You don't get it. You think you're the hero in everyone's story. But not everyone wants to worship at your altar. I stayed still. Let her rant. You humiliated me by offering me that apprentice role. You think I don't know that was punishment in a pretty box. I waited a moment. Then, you accepted it. I gave you a door. You chose how to walk through it. She stood. You still want me to fail?
No, Madison.
I want you to grow. But I'm not going to hold the ladder while you kick others in the face. Silence. Then she laughed bitterly. You think you're better than me? No, I said. I think I became better than who I used to be. And you're still figuring out how to start. She left without another word. 3 days later, she submitted her resignation. No dramatic exit. No announcement. Just a forwarded email from Marcus. Madison Hale has tendered her resignation effective immediately. Some of the team asked what happened. I said she chose a different path. That was all. But inside, I felt the full weight of what we'd built. This company, this culture, this personal arc that had brought me from invisible dreamer to grounded leader. And I felt something else, too. Relief. Not because she was gone, but because I no longer needed her to see me. After Madison left, the air in the office seemed to breathe differently. It wasn't that people celebrated. There were no whispered jokes, no sighs of relief. Instead, there was a quiet kind of recalibration, like the tension we hadn't noticed until it was gone had finally lifted, and now we could all sit up straighter, exhale fully, be at ease. Amelia came to me a few days later. Thank you, she said softly. For what? For backing us. For not making excuses for her. I smiled. I just did what I hoped someone would have done for me. But the truth was, I'd done what no one had done for me. And for the first time, I understood something deeper. Leadership wasn't about being liked. It wasn't about proving people wrong. It was about standing in your values when it would have been easier to stay silent. I didn't feel victorious. I felt grown. The next Monday, I arrived earlier than usual. I walked through the space slowly. Each desk, each plant, each scatter of notebooks and scribbled on whiteboards was a testament to the work we'd poured into this dream. My dream. I stopped in front of the wall where I kept a framed photo, a single page torn from a college notebook. On it, in slanted handwriting, were the words, "Creative freedom is my currency." It was something I'd written when I was 22.
Broke.
Humiliated. Still reeling from the coffee shop incident. Still licking the wounds from Madison's laughter. Back then, I wasn't sure I'd make anything out of that dream. But I'd kept that paper, through roommates, moves, heartbreaks, and pivots. It reminded me of who I was before I had anything to prove. I touched the glass. Still her, I thought. But more. Later that week, we held a team retreat, something we did twice a year. We rented a cozy space in the woods, a kind of creative off-site with bonfires, workshops, and storytelling under the stars. No phones, no decks, no metrics, just presence. On the second night, after dinner, I sat with the team in a circle. The prompt was simple. Share a moment that changed your direction. Amelia shared how her father's sudden passing had forced her to rethink her law school path. Lena talked about leaving her old job after being told she was too emotional for leadership. Marcus admitted he almost quit HR to become chef. Then it was my turn. I held the talking stick, yes, we used one, and looked around. My turning point, I said. It was a laugh. Everyone waited. I was 21, newly passionate about design and branding. And I shared my dream out loud for the first time. I said I wanted to create a space where ideas and art and people mattered more than prestige or power. I swallowed. And someone laughed. Not just any someone. A friend. No one said a word. It broke something in me. But eventually it lit something too. Not vengeance. Not ego. Just resolve. I paused. That laugh still echoes sometimes. But now it's background noise. Silence again. Then Amelia whispered, "You built the thing you were told would never exist." I nodded.
Yeah.
We did. That night, I lay in my bunk staring at the ceiling. I thought about Madison, not with anger, not even with sadness, but with a strange kind of compassion. Because in the end, her presence had given me something I didn't know I needed. Closure. She had once represented every obstacle I feared: judgment, dismissal, ridicule. And now, she was just a person. A flawed, struggling person trying to figure herself out. And me? I was no longer trying to be understood. I was simply being myself, loudly, proudly, messily. Back in the city, life picked up again. Projects. Clients.
Deadlines.
Late nights. We launched 2 major campaigns that quarter and brought on 4 new team members. But one morning, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived. Handwritten. It was from Madison. "Morgan, I don't expect you to read this. I wouldn't blame you if you threw it away. But I'm writing anyway because I owe you something. You didn't humiliate me. You offered me a lifeline and I didn't know how to hold it. I was too wrapped up in who I used to be to see what I could have become. You were always serious about your dream.
I was never serious about mine.
That scared me. That's why I mocked you. I don't work in branding anymore. I'm taking time off. Volunteering. Learning to listen. And I think I finally understand what you were building. Thank you for seeing me when I didn't deserve to be seen. And I hope someday I can build something worth being proud of too." Madison. I sat at my desk for a long time after reading it. Then I placed the letter in a drawer. Not as a keepsake, but as a reminder. We're all capable of becoming more than our worst moments. And sometimes, even the ones who laughed the loudest at our dreams end up teaching us the most. 6 months later, I sat on stage at a local entrepreneurship summit. The panel was titled "From Mockery to Mastery: Building a Business That Defied the Odds." The irony didn't escape me. The moderator, a sharp woman named Clarissa, smiled warmly. "Morgan, you built one of the fastest-growing branding firms in the city. What was the most surprising part of your journey?" I leaned into the mic. Honestly, that I survived the moments when I thought I wouldn't. Laughter.
Nods.
But also, I continued, how much of what hurt me became part of my foundation. You learn to turn pain into power. You learn to turn doubt into discipline. After the panel, I mingled with attendees, shook hands, answered questions. But in the back of my mind, I kept thinking about what real justice looks like. Not humiliation. Not revenge. But truth. A month later, an invitation landed in my inbox. It was from Columbia University, our alma mater. They were hosting an alumni roundtable on careers that took the road less traveled. I was one of the honorees. So was another name on the list. Madison Crowley. My first instinct was to decline. But then I remembered that leadership sometimes meant showing up, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. The event was in a sleek conference room on the top floor of the Columbia Alumni Center. The skyline glittered beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. We were mic'd up, seated in leather chairs, facing an audience of students and fellow alumni. Madison sat 2 seats away. She looked different, more grounded, simpler hair, Neutral blazer. Less edge, more ease. When it was her turn, she didn't skirt around the truth. I was the kind of student who loved the applause but hated the process, she admitted. I dismissed things that scared me. I mocked people who dared to dream differently. She didn't look at me directly, but she didn't have to. Later, during the networking mixer, I found myself standing by the refreshment table when Madison approached me. Hey, she said. Hey. You look peaceful. I laughed softly. That might be the best compliment I've gotten in years. She nodded, then glanced down at her cup. I wanted to tell you something. Go ahead. I finally started something. My own consultancy. Small, scrappy, but mine. And I used one of your interviews as a guide. I raised an eyebrow. Really? She smiled sheepishly.
Yeah.
The one where you talked about choosing people over prestige. That line stayed with me. For a second, I wasn't sure what to say. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out a little envelope. I wasn't sure if I'd see you here, but I brought this just in case. She took it. Inside was a card with one of our company's signature quotes. What they call delusion is often the beginning of vision. Madison looked at the card, then back at me. You always were serious about this. I still am. She nodded. Thank you for not staying bitter. I figured if I held on to bitterness, there'd be no room left to build. We stood there in silence, the hum of conversation around us like static. For the first time, there was no tension between us. Just two people who had, in very different ways, finally come home to themselves. A week later, back at the office, I walked past the hiring board where resumes were pinned and reviewed. Our junior recruiter, a bright-eyed 20-something named Zoe, waved me down. Hey, Morgan, quick question. We've got a resume from a woman named Andrea Keller, used to work at one of Madison's old agencies. Strong experience, but she mentioned she left because of a toxic environment. Any red flags we should know? I scanned the resume, then smiled. No red flags. Just someone who probably knows exactly what kind of workplace she doesn't want anymore. Zoe nodded. Got it. As I turned away, I felt a familiar warmth in my chest. Not pride, not power, but a full-circle kind of peace. Later that night, I walked home through the quiet city streets. The air was cool, the lights soft, and I let myself drift in memory. The girl in the coffee shop, the laughter,
The shame.
the quiet, aching belief that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't cut out for this dream.
And now?
I was walking proof that sometimes poetic justice doesn't roar. It whispers. It builds. It sits in the corner office and signs the paychecks. It mentors the next generation. It laughs, not cruelly but freely. And sometimes, poetic justice is looking someone in the eye, years later, and seeing not an enemy but a reflection of who you once were.
Flawed.
Learning, searching, but no longer lost.